his lack of knowledge of the roster that we had, of the players that we had, and of the American culture in general was a big, big disappointment for me.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a special edition of Inside American Soccer. We're going to dive into our end-of-year lists and review everything that was the U.S. men's national team in the year of 2025. Our best performers, best moments, and so much more American soccer and beyond. I'm your host, Tom Bogert, and as always, I'm joined by my friend, one of the greatest players in U.S. soccer history, a veteran of 3 World Cups, former U.S. U20 World Cup and MLS head coach, Tab Ramos. But Tab, before we start, we got to go to a big picture look of 2025 for American soccer. And before I give the rundown of the highs and the lows of the year that was, sitting here almost at the end of the year, Tab, what is your big picture thoughts on 2025 for the U.S. men's national team?
Hey, Tom, great to start another show. I think this will be a good one, maybe a little bit longer than usual, but it should be an exciting one. This has been a little bit of an up and down year, but it's really exciting the way we're ending. And I think I would take with me that part that I think we finally turned the corner, right? And we've been waiting to turn the corner for a long time now. I think this has been a big year for the U.S. national team and for the fans, because the fans, I think, for the first time in a long time can finally see a direction, and the direction is a positive one, and I'm excited about that as well.
That's very well put. So let's get into what those highs and lows were. And as you said, we did end the year on a high, but it wasn't like that for most of the year, to be quite honest. So they played 18 matches in the calendar year of 2025. The national team went 10 wins, 2 draws, and 6 losses. To go into the numbers just a little bit more, two of those wins came in the January camp, which is useful, but I don't count towards an overall record because it's not a FIFA window. It was Venezuela's C team or whatever, right? So, all in all, in FIFA windows, they went 8 wins, 2 draws, and 6 losses. There were some high highs at the end of the year, but man, there were some low lows. Before the Gold Cup, the national team lost their first 4 competitive matches of 2025 by a combined score of 9-3. And these were games against Panama, Canada, Turkey, and Switzerland. Things looked very, very bad going into the Gold Cup. The performances at the Gold Cup, they get to the final, but it wasn't convincing at all throughout the entire run of that tournament. Then in September, they returned for friendlies, and they played South Korea at Red Bull Arena in New Jersey. And at halftime of that game, South Korea is playing the United States off the pitch. From that point and the days beyond, there were serious and genuine conversations as to whether Maurcio Pochettino was still going to be the head coach of this team by the World Cup. But they steadied the ship from there on out. There was the formation change, a tactical change. They end the year on a 5-game unbeaten run. 4 of those were wins, and all of those games were against World Cup quality opponents. So overall, Tab, what would be your grade for 2025 for the USMNT?
I would have to say, I'll have to go with a C+, B- grade. I think it would have been an F had we, we've been looking, first half of South Korea game. It was certainly an F, but I think the team has been certainly on a rising positive mode since, and I think Mauricio Pochettino finally recognized that we're not strong enough in the back to play with 2 center backs, and I think that change was huge. But I think it's a change that not only I saw, but I think a lot of people from outside were seeing. Hey, you know what? We have great wing backs. We have a lot of options at the wing back position. Why don't we just go 3 center backs? It seemed like the obvious thing to do at the time, and I was really happy to see that. Because of the way we ended the year, I'd hate to only say C+ or B- because I want to be more positive than that. I want to be like on A mode. But I think because so much of the year we spent, shedding tears once again, I think that it can't be higher than that.
I think that's totally fair. And of course, if we did it in segments, the first 6 months, F. And that you don't need to think about it twice. It feels very obvious. The last 6 months, probably B+, A-, right? Like, we don't want to get ahead of our skis. While everything was impressive, you don't want to reserve something A+ for segments where the United States didn't play, a true blue blood and a true like top 8 team in the world. And that doesn't take anything away from these 6 months. But overall, to your point of the formation change, it did kind of feel it was obvious something needed to change. And I've long been in the camp, even when Greg Berhalter was the coach. And again, there were positives and negatives there. One of my frustrations was this team, the players are all best set to play in transition, high intensity type of game model, not like a slow possession. And that helped a lot, particularly defensively, but it came with drawbacks. So I, for a while, thought that if we increase the intensity and the tempo, and I was hoping Mauricio Pochettino was going to do that. He eventually did. I did think that the back three was the right, but you could argue that, right? Like maybe there was different combinations, and they did finally figure it out. That is the most important change of the year. But even it's something that was so positive, I don't really understand why it took so long to get there. I think that's a frustration that's going to be eroded by the sands of time, and that's in a good way. They eventually got there, but it just felt like we wasted a lot of games on like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work, and oh cool, like they played 72 players this year. That's too many in the year before a World Cup.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we were saying that in September. We're looking at our watches, saying, okay, it's been a year now. How long is it going to take for us to play better? And at least, I mean, if you remember, let's go back. We can go back only 2 months, really 2.5 months, and think about the one thing, the one common denominator that every, let's say, pundit that's not directly associated with the national team was talking about, that the team was lacking, and that was what? It was effort. We weren't making an effort, and we were thinking, okay, well, we brought this big time coach. Of course, he's going to have amazing tactics. Of course, he has great experience. He's done it at Chelsea. He did it at PSG. He did it at Tottenham for a long time, taking that club to the Champions League final, which obviously it's not necessarily a winning club. But and he comes here, and now we're a year later, and not only do we have the proper tactics, not only do we look good playing and attacking, but we're not making an effort. There's a big problem here. I think a change has to be made. And I think we were all starting to, as much as we didn't want to pull the trigger early, we were all starting to think, well, this is not working. This is not working. And then the change came. And so it came at the perfect time when I think all of the pressure was going on the national team and on Mauricio Pochettino specifically.
Exactly. There was so much pressure. Again, like this was a hire that was widely celebrated, I think, as it should have been because of his pedigree, because of his ability, everything he's accomplished in his career. I think we were all pleasantly surprised. Oh, wow. The United States were able to convince Mauricio Pochettino. Pochettino saw this as a very good project to take on. So it started there, and there was a lot of goodwill, and there was a honeymoon period. And then again, by September, the whole conversation was, should he still be the coach? And my first answer at that time was, I don't even know if we can talk about it in terms of merit. I don't think that it's possible financially to pay out Pochettino after paying out Berhalter and then going to get another coach. My answer of like, yeah, it should be Pochettino was more about being practical than anything else. And credit to him and credit to his staff for being able to turn it around. On the effort side of things, I'm going to use two things that you've said to me in my youth in games. One, earn the right to play. We all talk about playing these good passing sequences, game models. All of that is extremely important. You don't get to do that if you're not getting stuck in. You don't get to do that if you're not putting in the effort. You don't get to play possession if you're not winning the ball back. So that's one. And another one that you said that stuck with me for a while. Every ball, every time. There is not a 50-50 challenge that anybody should be pulling out of. It shouldn't be, oh, we'll get the next one. And I think by the fall, this team really embodied that. And that is something that Pochettino would go out of his way in press conferences, in private meetings, talking to players, talking to people around the players. That was the most important. Like, hey, I don't care who you are at this point. I don't care what your technical ability is. If you're not giving a baseline effort, desire, and fight, you're not getting on the field. And when that finally turned, then you started to see some of the tactical ideas, because in September, the players were saying, hey, we want to play. Like, I was like straight up asking them, what is the plan? Because we kind of can't see any sort of identity when you're watching from above. And they were like, oh, we want a high press and all this. And I was like, I don't see it, right? It's not coming across because they weren't doing, like the team was too disjointed and the baseline effort, combativeness, fight wasn't there to allow us to see the game on their terms.
And you know the thing about what's happened with this team is I think to all of us on the outside, the team looked confused more than anything else. It didn't look like a team. It didn't look like it had a real shape to it. You know, at times, if you remember, we can go back, you know, when the last time Anthony Robinson played on the team, we thought that we had something new when he was playing inside. If you recall, in one of the games, he was coming inside all the time, and we were very effective with him sort of being out of position and roaming into midfield. And we thought, oh, okay, now we have something a little different. Look, you know, what's important is to recognize that we all know Mauricio Pochettino is a great coach. And we've always known that. So it's not like we were sitting outside thinking, this guy just doesn't know what he's doing. I think the shocking part for most of us that have been involved with the national team for a long time was that it took him so long to figure out what buttons he needed to push to get the most out of players. And for me, that was too long. That was a mistake. I think his lack of knowledge of the roster that we had, of the players that we had, and of the American culture in general was a big, big disappointment for me because I thought when you take one of these jobs, you're pretty well prepared in terms of you know what you're walking into. And of course, you're always going to have surprises. It's normal. No coach knows everything when they go in. But I think the fact that it took a year to figure out, hey, you know what? American players will run through the wall for me if I ask them to. That took too long. And I can tell you from experience that there's not a player in that locker room that wouldn't run through the wall for a coach, because that's a signature of an American player. They will do anything to win.
Exactly. And that is like, we're not going to have the talent of Spain, Argentina, Brazil, France, Germany, right? Just insert all of the traditional powerhouses. The only way that this program is successful, and Tab, like you said, you look back on the most successful teams over the last 30 years, that has been an absolute constant. And that is always a hallmark of this group. And it's something to be extremely proud of. It's something I know I'm proud of as growing up watching these teams and everything, right? Like even going to the early 2010s, like, yeah, obviously there was a ton of quality in that team. But to a man, you just had a lot of dogs and a lot of dudes who were extremely competitive. Piano players versus piano carriers is a typical phrase in soccer. We had a couple piano players, but that whole team were piano carriers. Even the ones who were really good, like Clint Dempsey, more than anybody else, would be in your face and doesn't back down from anything. Landon Donovan, he was probably the most special player in that team. Josie Altidore, all those guys still worked. Michael Bradley was one of my favorite players growing up. What I loved most about him wasn't his incredible technique. It was his drive, his fire, his intelligence, all of those things. And then when you put all of that together, you play beyond the sum of your parts. And it allows for those special moments with some of those special players. So again, for me, that has to be a given. That has to be a constant for the national team. It was a little disappointing. It took too long for it to really show. But at the end of the day, we got there, and with enough time to spare before the World Cup, though it did look touch and go there. We're going to get to Tyler Adams in a second, but just one more recap here. Going back to the Gold Cup, because you and I haven't really talked about this at all. That tournament papered some cracks very, very briefly. Even when they were winning, I think it was pretty clear that it wasn't going well, right? They beat Trinidad and Tobago 5-0 in that opening game, and it said, okay, like the Switzerland and Turkey losses in the rear view, started moving forward. Barely get by Saudi Arabia, barely get by Haiti. Lucky to beat Costa Rica on penalties, I want to be clear. Costa Rica, Alonso Martinez hit the post at some point near the end of the game. Costa Rica, I thought, were the better team on that day. So they could have been eliminated in the quarterfinals. Semifinals against Guatemala, they were hanging on for dear life in the last 10 minutes. And that, again, no disrespect to Guatemala, what a fantastic performance by them. That's not a team or a game that the United States should be hanging on for dear life at the end of. Mexico in the final, they started fine, and that was one of the first times you really saw the intensity and the energy. They kept that up for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then Mexico completely dominated the way they're out. So the Gold Cup, as we kind of quickly can forget, the Gold Cup did happen. This year, it wasn't a disaster, but it certainly wasn't a success. Before we get to a break, let's talk about Tyler Adams. That is probably the most consequential news that we might be talking about today. Tyler Adams left Bournemouth's game this week with a knee injury in just 5 minutes. At time of recording, we do not have a clear 100% medical diagnosis. Their manager said that he suspects it's MCL damage. He said damage. He did not say whether that means tear or sprain. MCL is not as bad as tearing your ACL. So hopefully, worst case scenario is avoided. And again, we're using hopefully because this isn't totally confirmed at time of recording. But Tab, this is a player the group can't afford to lose.
No question. I mean, that's a piece that I think, if you were to do a survey of every single, pundit of U.S. soccer and anyone who covers this team or has been covering this team, Tyler Adams is one that everybody puts right in the center there. Yeah. That's your six, right? That's the middle of the midfield of your team. So that's an important player. It's unfortunate. We have to hope at this point for some MCL because MCL is really difficult to tear. You normally just sprain it, and it takes quite a few weeks. It could take sometimes 6 to 8 weeks, and it's hard to gain confidence because it's hard to hit the ball with the inside of your foot when that happens. And you have your body sort of records that memory of the pain when you hit the ball. So it's a little bit difficult, but not as bad. Obviously, ACL at this point would be tough to recover from in time for the World Cup. Now, from experience, I can tell you I had an ACL injury prior to '98 World Cup. It would be 3 weeks ago now, and I did make it to that World Cup. Of course, not playing great by any means.
Tab, I just want to interject to be clear. You tore your ACL in November, and by June you were playing in the World Cup.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I was playing in May. I was playing MLS games. So I think I played 2 or 3 MLS games before I got called into the national team and went to that World Cup. Obviously, from an ACL, the thing about ACL is you can recover, but it's really a year before you feel like yourself again. So, hey, let's just hope for the best. Let's hope this is not an ACL injury. This would be a big loss for the national team at this point.
Built different back in your day, Tab. That is unbelievable. And you, how many times did you do your ACL in your career?
During my career, twice, but I did it one more time after I retired playing playing on like Sunday league. So 3 times. 3 times.
Was that last one your Sunday league retirement?
Yes, that was pretty much it. That was around 2010, 2012. I'm like, I'm done with because it's 6 months of rehab that you don't want to go through. Yeah,
exactly. When your entire job in your playing career, like while rehab sucks, at least that's your entire job is to get back on the field. Now, after your career, you're doing parenting, you're doing your day job, everything else, and it's, oh man, I got to go to rehab. So that is brutal. Hopefully that never happens again. But we got to go for a quick break. We'll be right back with our top 5 USMNT Players of the Year. Please rate, subscribe, and review Inside American Soccer with Tom Boger and Tab Ramos, wherever you get your podcast. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Tab, I'm going to put you on the spot here with some quick trivia before we get to our top 5s. There were 18 USMNT games this year. Do you know which player played the most minutes for the U.S. men's national team in 2025?
I'm going to take a guess because I wasn't expecting this question, but I think one of them that has to be up there has to be, if it's not Matt Freese, it'd have to be Max Arfsten.
Bing. Matt Freese, you got that. You're 1 for 1.
Okay.
Good start.
All right.
Who scored the most goals? I don't know if you're going to get this.
I'm going to say Diego Luna, but I don't know.
No, but close. He was second. It was Patrick Adjamong, scored 5 goals in 686 minutes for the national team. Most assists, I think you might get this one.
Most assist, I'm going to have to go with, would it be Alex Freeman?
No. Different defender, kind of. Midfield. Max Arfsten, 5 assists.
Oh, I was going to say that.
Most goal contributions, neither Adjamong nor Arfsten is the total goal contribution leader.
Oh, really? Now I'm just trying to figure out who's played the most games. I'll go Diego Luna.
Oh, you got it.
Right.
So it is Diego Luna,
Okay.
4 goals, 4 assists. I will tell you, when I was putting together this information, I would not have gotten Diego Luna. I don't think I would have gotten Adjamong either, so I think you did better than I would have done. In that, let's go to our top 5 U.S. men's national team players
All right.
of 2025. Do you want to go first? Or do you want me?
Sure. Do you want me to start? I'll start from 5.
Go ahead.
And
yeah, go
you
for
want me to
5
do all of
down.
them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start at number 5. I will have to go with Alex Freeman. I think
I like that.
he really broke into this team. Likely, if you and I were speaking a year ago from today, certainly this was not a player that was going to be on the radar as to potentially playing a big part in a World Cup 6 months from now. And I think the work that he's done this year, and in particular, the way he finished the year, is he sort of finished the year the way our national team finished the year. And we can't not put those two together. Because I think maybe part of the reason the national team finished the way it did is because guys like Alex Freeman had the season they did. So I'll stop there with that.
Let me one thing with Freeman is not only was he not on the radar for the national team, at this time last year, if you made me guess, there's going to be one Orlando City Academy defender who breaks through and becomes a starter, I would have said Thomas Williams for that team. So what Alex Freeman did over these last 12 months is nothing short of spectacular.
Agreed. The next one, and I'd hate to have them this low, but I mean, obviously, these are all great players we're talking about who had great seasons. At number 4, I have to say Max Arfsten. I mean, what a great year he had. I don't know, even though he's number 4, I actually don't know that I can say someone had a better year than he did. He broke into the national team. He made us forget about Anthony Robinson, who has been our best player for the national team on a consistent basis for the last 4 or 5 years. And Arfsten came in there. Man, this kid just took over, confident, wanting to make a difference, not being afraid, looked like he belonged from the beginning. And yes, he had a few moments defensively where we can say he can do better, but every player has moments. What a great year by Arfsten. I feel confident that, and it's good to see that Anthony Robinson is back in the picture now and now playing at Fulham again. So he should be our starter on that side, but not afraid at all if Robinson is not there, that Arfsten wouldn't do a great job at the World Cup. So great season for him.
And that's a newfound confidence. For a while, we would talk about backup left back as just a big old question mark and hoping that we never needed to find an answer because of how consistent and available Anthony Robinson was. And Max Arfsten answered that question emphatically this year.
Yeah, and so I'll move up to number 3, and the next 3 guys are guys that are doing it week in and week out at the top level. And so you have to put them up there because regardless of what year we're talking about, the season Tyler Adams is having at Bournemouth has been a great season. He's a solid starter. He scored an amazing goal a couple weeks ago. And he's just a guy that I think, his own manager thinks they can't really do without, and that's on an EPL team. Obviously, we know about his leadership qualities. We know about how he plays with our national team, where he leaves everything on the field every single time. But he's doing it week in and week out in the top league in the world, and that's just amazing. So Tyler Adams would be my 3rd. My 2nd would be Christian Pulisic, and I hate to put him at 2nd because what Christian is doing at AC Milan is not something that we're going to see often, and that we're sure we're going to see again anytime soon by someone else. He's on one of the top clubs in the world where there's a ton of pressure every single week, and he delivers week after week at a top club like this. He didn't miss a bunch of national team games, and on the national team, to be fair, he has not been great this year. And I can go from beginning to end the whole year, and that's maybe what made me lean a little bit about him being 2nd. But needless to say, great player, and has had a great 2025.
Exactly. This is more so for his club form because of how great he's been for AC Milan. But with the national team itself, he's only played 315 minutes, 1 goal contribution. Like you said, though, we know how good he is and his quality, and I don't think that there's any worry there. So while it hasn't been a banner year for the national in him in a U.S. jersey, it's been a banner year for him in an AC Milan jersey. I agree with him too.
And my number 1 would have to be Chris Richards. I think you may go into some stats later on him, but I have to say, I mean, how far he's come. I mean, he's the one, before this a year ago, if we had to pick players in terms of who really belongs on that 11 and who's one you can't move, obviously Tyler Adams and Christian Pulisic would have been those names that came up, and likely no one else. Maybe you could say McKinney, but likely no one else. And there's no question that if you started to pick an 11 now on one that doesn't move from his spot, that's Chris Richards. And it's not just here. It's at Crystal Palace. It's everywhere he plays. And by the way, he's doing it with a smile. And by the way, he has become a team leader. You remember now the Mexico game, he has to grab guys and pull guys and tell people what to do. I mean, he has become a lot more than a player for us and for our national team and for our future. And no question for me, our best player this year.
Yeah, what a fantastic season. He's 25 years old now, so he's into his prime for a center back. This is somebody who we knew how good he was, how good he could be, his talent level when he was breaking through FC Dallas, going from Dallas to Bayern Munich before playing a minute for the Dallas first team. That's how highly regarded he was. And he's made good on that potential and probably even a little bit more for what he's doing for Palace. So I really like your top five. There's a lot of overlap between us. I'm glad that it isn't exact same 5 for 5. So I'll go with my number 5. I'm going to go with Matt Freese. So he won the U.S. men's national team starting job, playing in 13 of the 18 games this year. He played the most minutes, as I said, and this is a year in which more than 70 players appeared or was called into camp for the national team. He was one of the very, very few constants all year long, and a foundational piece right now, very clearly, is the inside position to be the starting goalkeeper at the World Cup. We had goalkeeper questions coming into 25. We do not have them going out of 25. And along the way, he's been one of the best goalkeepers in MLS for NYCFC, and impressive for him when he got his chance that he hasn't looked back, and good on the coaching staff to give him a chance because it was pretty wide open at goalkeeper. And Freese wasn't even really one of the top 3 guys that we were talking about until he got to playing and won that job.
I mean, agreed. I can't add too much more. I mean, I would, obviously would have to name him as an honorable mention to my list. It's not easy to do what he does. And by the way, he did it as he was being questioned the whole time. Because the goalkeeping situation has been a mess for us for the last couple of years, and he made it now a steady one that we don't necessarily have to worry about.
Exactly. Turning question marks into exclamation points, I think, for me. So Freese is number 5. Number 4, I went back and forth, but I ultimately picked Malik Tillman. So in the summer, he earned a big money transfer to Bayer Leverkusen. He's still settling in that club, but he does have 3 goals. What this is more for is his performance at the Gold Cup, where, again, he was one of the few bright spots. But particularly in the spring, he comes back from a knee injury. He was out for a couple months. He returns to PSV's lineup. They immediately don't drop a point in the last 7 games of the season. They go 21 for 21, 7 wins out of 7 games. In that time frame, he had 5 goals and an assist, all of those to get the title. They came from what looked to be an insurmountable deficit against Ajax. And Malik Tillman was an integral part of that. Without Malik Tillman, they do not win the title. And I think that is very, very important. He had 3 goals and 2 assists at the Gold Cup. Like I said, he was, I think, the best performer for the national team. And those 2 things have been the baseline of when we do our preferred starting lineups. Tillman is either in it or he's the last guy you drop for playing next to Pulisic in the 2 line. And for that, I think Arfstead and Freeman have been really, really good. Like you said, this is a top 5. All of these are really good options. But for me, I went with Tillman ahead of those 2.
Yeah, that's a good call. And his transfer to Leverkusen shows you what everyone thinks about him. That is not just us here, and it's not just on our national team, but he's doing it at the biggest stage in Germany, and he plays for a huge club. So I think because he's a little bit more of a quiet type player, right? Even when he takes over the game, it's really all with actions, right? He's not very vocal. He's not in anyone's face. He's not, he even when he makes a big play, he sort of gives credit to his teammates constantly. And because of that, sometimes it's hard to think of him as sort of the best player and doing great. But you're absolutely right. He's had a great season and I think deserving of that spot.
So we have the same top 3. 3 Tyler Adams, 2 Christian Pulisic, 1 Chris Richards. Let's go with Adams. He made 34 Premier League appearances for Bournemouth over the calendar year and 10 U.S. men's national team caps. I haven't looked deep into the numbers. I've got to imagine this is the most games he's played in a calendar year, maybe in his career, if not for a long time. And this would be a whole lot more emphatic if he hadn't just got hurt this week. So hopefully we get some good news there. But overall, 2025 was awesome. He was in the 95th percentile among midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues in the Champions League in tackles, 77th percentile in interceptions. Again, these are things that we know, and it's very cool to see him. Like, he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the world at what he does. He doesn't do as much in possession as some of the like deep lying playmakers, but there is few better than him in the defensive side of the ball at his position. And this is an American, and he's getting recognized for that beyond Bournemouth, beyond the U.S. national team, which is always nice to see. Christian Pulisic, as you said, this is more about AC Milan than it is the national team. Well, with AC Milan, he had 13 goals and 7 assists in the calendar year in Serie A. That's 20 goal contributions. That was most of any Serie A player in this calendar year. Say that again. Christian Pulisic had more goal contributions than any other player in Serie A over the calendar year of 2025. Like you said, Tab, that is not something that is normal for an American player at a club like this. I don't know how many times we're going to see it again if it's not Pulisic at this club. This has been a special year for Pulisic, even if it hasn't totally been with the national team because of those absences and injuries. And then number 1, I'm giving it to Chris Richards as well. Crystal Palace wins the FA Cup, first trophy in a long time. This is not a team that regularly wins trophies. They qualified for European competition, which is something that this team does not really ever do. He played the 28th most minutes by an outfield player in the Premier League in 2025. He won a starting job. He was a key, crucial player for this team. Along the way, he made 12 national team caps. This has been a career best year for a really good player.
Yeah, I mean, we're in agreement. Obviously, these top 3 players are where they are because I think we're all thinking along the same lines. But yeah, Richards has had an incredible year, and I'm anxious to see what happens next because I'm sure Crystal Palace is not the club he's going to end up at.
It's not bad for right now. Hopefully nothing until after the World Cup, which reminds me, we're going to have a January transfer window preview coming your way in the near future. So stay tuned for that. We're going to dive into that and all the other players and what January might bring or what it should bring. Another top 5 list tab. We're going to go with our top 5 moments of 2025. I'm going to start. I'm going to go with number 5, the altercation, let's call it, with Paraguay, in which it started with Alex Freeman wrestling on a throw-in, and the entire benches cleared. All of the players got involved. Thankfully, it ended up safe. Nobody got injured. Nobody got sent off. No punches were thrown that we could totally see. There seemed to be some knees thrown and some headlocks put in. But I think that was indicative of the shift in mentality and Mauricio Pochettino getting the team to fight, wanting the team to fight, all of that. I think that was very important in the grand scheme of things in 25.
Yeah, those are the little things that make you a team. Is those little moments when you're willing to stick up for your teammate when you don't really have to. Good moment, and I agree with you that it was probably important for Mauricio Pochettino to see that.
Even though, because Mauricio Pochettino ended up on the ground when he was trying to break it up, I don't think Pochettino totally loved it, the moment for himself. But all's well that ends well. Number 4 for me, Alejandro Zendejas, his goal against Japan. It was wasn't quite a bite. It was a volley. It was a lovely cross and a lovely finish. I think that was the goal of the year for me, Tab. I don't know if you have anything else off the top of your head.
No, I don't. And this is, Zendejas is one of the guys that I picked to be on the team. And this is one of the reasons why, because he's a great finisher, plays for a big club and comes up big every week for them. And yeah, this was a great goal, great quality, good reading of the game as he sat back and as he volleyed the ball into the corner. I mean, great goal. And I can't argue that it might be the goal of the year.
Number 3, Matt Freese, his penalty shootout against Costa Rica at the World Cup. I alluded to it earlier. I think Costa Rica were the better team on that day. We get to a shootout. The other team has Keylor Navas. Anytime Keylor Navas steps into a penalty shootout, that team is going to be very confident. But it was Matt Freese who stole the show. He saved 3 penalties in that shootout for the United States to advance. And I think that was his defining moment of 25.
There are defining moments for goalkeepers. This is one for him. If we look back a couple of years, Ethan Horvath had one of those moments when he saved a penalty against Mexico in a final. It's what you do after that matters. And I think what he's done after has really mattered and put him as a solid number one.
I totally agree. My second biggest moment of the year is switching to the 3-4-2-1 during the loss to South Korea. In that moment, it was rock bottom, and we found light at the end of the tunnel, and we didn't know it yet because things looked good, but it was very easily, like in the last 30 minutes or so, it was easily, well, game states, South Korea made 7 changes and took their foot off the gas. Who cares? It was still an awful performance. But that was a ray of light, and thankfully they followed that and kept that, and that has been the biggest trigger to this team performing much better with the new system and style.
Yeah. I mean, without question, that was the moment. That was when we turned the switch on. It was sort of okay. We have nothing left. Let's turn this switch on and see what happens. And that's exactly what happened. But the team turned on from then, and we've been a different team since.
Exactly. A number one moment. It's not as much a moment as it is a game because I can't parse it down to just one. U.S. men's national team 5, Uruguay 1. I don't have much more to say, but holy shit.
Incredible. I mean, if you don't have anything more to say, then I'll add a little bit to that.
That's it.
But yeah, I mean, it was a great moment because this is you can get results here and there, but following that Paraguay win to go against Uruguay and to do this, that is just the amount of confidence that gives the team. You can't measure it because now we have a couple months in which the players can come into the next camp thinking that, hey, we're a good team and we can really play against the top teams.
Yeah, I'm still baffled by that. It was such a cataclysmic loss for Uruguay that Bielsa called a press conference and people were wondering if he was going to resign, and he spent an hour giving bizarre quotes, something to the effect of, "I'm a toxic person. I'm no fun to be around. We sent Uruguay and Marcelo Bielsa into an existential crisis with that game. So I think that has to be number one for me.
Yeah, not only did Bielsa say he's a toxic man, but he said anyone who comes anywhere near me becomes toxic like me, which is
it was bizarre.
I'm not sure if you're trying to get fired or I don't know what else you can say and actually not get fired. So, but that's where we are. But you're right. I mean, we caused that. Uruguay has been having problems. The last 18 months have been terrible. They only won 2 or 3 out of the last 15 or 16 games, so not playing well. But we buried them at that moment and put them into a big time crisis for sure.
Tab, let's get to your top 5 moments. It seems that these might be more of the important moments, maybe not the traditional best 5.
No, they're definitely not best 5s because only because our year has been, I don't want to say up and down, but it's been a lot of down and then up in the end, which is the way you want to end, right? But we have to recognize that this has not been all fun and games this year for our national team. We've had some historic, horrible moments, and we have to know that happened. My number 5, I would have to say, it was us losing to Canada for the second straight time at home ever. And we can't take that lightly. Canada's our rival. They haven't, for us, really, we felt like they hadn't woken up. And we sort of woke Canada up this year. And they beat us twice. And they beat us twice in a row at home, which is really not a good place to be for us. Okay, so I'll say that as number 5. Obviously, I'm sure Jesse Marsh enjoyed that win in the 3rd place game.
Very much.
But it was a bad loss for us. It didn't leave a good feeling. The team didn't play well. Poor moment. So I'll go with the number 4. I'll get to a little bit more positive, and that's our turnaround. This is where you talked before about the changing of the system, being one of the moments, and I think this was the result of that. For me, the 2 games, one are 1-1 versus Ecuador and the 2-1 win versus Paraguay were proof that our turnaround and our new system of play is exactly what we needed. The way we played against Ecuador in the 1-1 game, I hadn't seen a U.S. national team play that hard for many, many years. That to me showed what I think most of us were saying that we needed from our team, which was we just, if anything, let's forget about how we play, but can we play hard? And I think the team proved against a solid, very, very good Ecuador team, which, by the way, ended second in qualifying, but they were also taken three points were taken away from them. So they would have ended up a little bit even closer to Argentina in qualifying. So this is a really, really good Ecuador team, and I thought in the end we were the better team that day, and that was a great turnaround. So I think those two games for me were huge in terms of what the year has brought to us. As number 3, I'll have to go back as a little bit of an up and down. Our third straight loss to Panama.
Crazy.
It's just it reminds us a little bit of where we were not too long ago, and it also allows us to think about, hey, we've done well over the last couple months, but let's remember that not too long ago this is where we were. So let's keep focused on continuing to make progress. But we can't not mention that, because losing to, again, these are historic results that we had this year, so we can't forget about them. As number 2, I'll have to say the 5-1 win against Uruguay. It's everything you said before. It's everything I confirmed right after you said it. And tell me all you want about Uruguay's not at a good moment and all of those things. This is a huge win for us. This is the one that's really going to stick, and that we're really going to remember, 6-8 months from now when the World Cup starts. This is one of the results that we'll be looking at, and we're going to be saying, hey, no matter what happens on some of these friendlies, this is a result we look back and say, we can do this. We can really play, against these big teams. We can pressure them, and we can allow them to not play in a game and take over. And we took over this game. It could have been worse. We could have won by more. Great result, I would say, and I know I may get criticized for this, but for me, one of the best results ever because of the moment when it happened and the way it happened. I loved it. Yeah.
Me too. Completely. What a performance.
And
number 1.
And then as the number 1 moment, I have to say, it was the moment this summer, even though the results didn't come immediately, it was the moment this summer when Pochettino basically said, you don't pick and choose when you come to the national team. I tell you when you come, and when you come, you're all in. And that was a lesson for all the players who decided to take the summer off or were too tired or anything else. You know what? Argentinian players don't get too tired to go to the national team, and they play 90 minutes every week for every team they're on. When the national team calls, they all go. When Brazil's players are called, they all go. When Germany's players are called, they all go. U.S. players, when you get called to the national team, you have to go. And that was, for me, the big moment.
That is definitely one of the foundational moments of this year. More so, again, for the culture, the locker room, for everything else. I think all of these played extremely important ingredients to the turnaround, like you said, over the last few months to end the season, end the year on a high. That could have went both ways. There was a public Pulisic doing interviews, Pochettino doing interviews. That could have spun in a very negative way, but credit to Pochettino and the staff and to Pulisic for everything being good moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had all kinds of interviews. It wasn't just Pulisic. There was all kinds of interviews about, hey, we get criticized too much. Let's just play the game. Let's just play hard. When you come to the national team, everyone expects every player to play hard. And I think Pochettino finally put his foot down. Big moment for me this year.
That was very impressive. But on that, we're going to have to take a very, very quick break. We'll be right back with our predictions for the USMNT in 2026. Thank you for listening to Inside American Soccer. Please rate, review, subscribe. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside American Soccer. Tab, let's go back inside the locker room. And I want to hear about what the changes that you made for the U20 World Cup qualifying back in 2015.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is a great time actually to maybe discuss something like this because we're in the process of, preparation for a World Cup. So when I was with the under-20 national team as head coach, I was also the youth technical director. So I remember speaking with Jim Morehouse at US Soccer and saying, hey, I noticed that all of our schedules pretty much consist of us playing mostly home games. to prepare for World Cup qualifying. I said, I think we could really use for our players to be able to be in that environment in Central America before we actually go and play the games there. Is there any way that we can prepare games there? And so we, looked at the budget and all these things, even if we could prepare a little bit here and then go play the games there. So we decided to go to Honduras. This is late 2014. I think it might have been December, to prepare for our February or March qualifying to the World Cup that was going to be in Jamaica. So we decided to go to Honduras. So we speak with the Honduran Federation, and we decide, they agreed that we'd come down to Honduras, to San Pedro Sula. By the way, I always thought that these would be important moments, because I thought that it would be great for our players that potentially one day they would play for our senior national team, to get to know all of these stadiums that eventually they're really difficult to play in. So we agreed with Honduras that we would go and play at San Pedro Sula with our U20s, 2 games. But the one thing that I asked Honduras was that I wanted to do the game on closed door, because we have qualifying coming, and they agreed. They said, well, we also don't want coaches from other teams to see us. We were opposite groups, so we wanted to not be seen by other teams. So we go down to Honduras. We play at San Pedro Sula. We win. I think we won both games 2-1. We come back home. A couple months later, we go to qualifying. Our first game is against Guatemala, and we play Guatemala in Jamaica. We're winning the game. It became a really difficult game. We're winning only 1-0, like 91st minute of the game. Guatemala gets a corner kick. Ball gets, kicked out of the box. And one of the players, volleys it, puts it like upper corner. Stefan tried to save it, but it went right over his hand. So they tied. So we tied with Guatemala. Bad result to start, especially considering our next game was against Panama. They were better than we were at the time, and they beat us. So we were really behind the 8 ball to try to qualify. Anyway, long story short is, and what I wanted to get to is, the things that you find in Central America. Come to find out, at the end of the tournament, I'm sitting having a coffee with the coach of Guatemala, who is an Argentinian coach, and he tells me, yeah, I didn't want to tell you this, but do you know back in December when you played the 2 games in Honduras, that was a closed stadium? He goes, I was in the box for that. I saw both of your games.
Did he tell you how he got in there?
Yeah, he said
did Honduras.
He just spoke to Honduras, and Honduras just let him in. Yeah. So,
Jesus Christ. Come on, Honduras.
Yeah. So that's how we started our qualifying campaign, with a tie to Guatemala, and some of it due to the fact that Guatemala had scouted us directly at one of our games that we didn't want to be seen.
I think that is so pure CONCACAF. I think that also is a good way to prepare the players in the future, because this ended up being Canada, but there was the drone scandal with Canada. And then that sparked a lot of stories from, I think Tyler Adams was among the players who got asked, and some of the former guys. And it was just yeah, dude, we would see a janitor just standing and not doing any cleaning and just watching training. And it's just I wonder if he's actually a janitor, or is he actually a coaching member of another team? So right. I think that did prepare the boys for the future in CONCACAF.
Right. No doubt.
That is, oh my God. I could sit here for 3 hours and just listen to CONCACAF stories.
And by the way,
playing or coaching.
By the way, when we got to the stadium, I had our people look around. Guys like Jerry, the security guy that always travels with all the teams. I was like, hey, look around, make sure, so he must have been not only in a box, but hiding under something.
That's unbelievable. Yeah. That is unbelievable. That is incredible detail, because I don't know the San Pedro Sula. It's not one of those modern stadiums that I'm sure has a ton of suites and a ton of places to hide. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And credit to the ingenuity there of the Guatemalan coach to even find out about the game and then go to those great lengths. So I kind of think that they earned that draw.
Right. Yeah. I do too. Well, here's the part that actually is funny in the end. So in the end, we end up second in our group. We cross over to play with El Salvador, and now Guatemala ended up third in our group and crossed over to play Honduras. So the two that I think cheated ended up playing each other, and Guatemala got knocked out of the World Cup and never qualified.
Would have been poetic if
Yeah.
Guatemala beat Honduras as
Right.
Honduras
Right.
got one over on you.
Yeah.
Oh, that is fantastic. This is one of my favorite segment every week. So appreciate all the stories, Tab. I think that we're gonna get I think that there's a lot more in the well to drill from. So I'm excited as we continue on the show. Before we get out of here, because this is one of our last shows of 2025, we recapped the year that was. Let's look ahead and make a couple predictions. And we're not going to go person by person, team by team, big picture, small picture, just a random prediction that kind of comes to mind. So I'll go first. For me, Christian Pulisic and AC Milan will win the Scudetto, and Pulisic is going to be named Player of the Year for Serie A.
Wow. I'm happy to hear that. I mean, we'd love to see that happen. He had a great season last year and could have been Player of the Year last year. But yeah, I would love to see that. Like we said, sometimes we don't recognize what we're watching. But what Christian Pulisic is doing now at AC Milan is something that we may not see for a long time. So I would love to see that.
Yeah, he's fourth in goal contributions right now, and he's only played 518 minutes because he's been limited a little bit by injury, including coming off the bench a couple week ago in scoring 2 goals against Torino in 24 minutes. So I'm very confident that if AC Milan's going to win the Scudetto, Pulisic is going to be a driving factor, and if they do that, I think he's Player of the Year.
All right, so I'll go with mine, and mine is going to be a little bit more of a team thing as I look into what the World Cup is going to be like and sort of our show and what we're about. I think this is what's going to happen this year. I think we're going to struggle. Our national team is going to struggle through our friendlies versus Belgium, Portugal, and Senegal a little bit, but we will beat Germany right before going into the World Cup, and we will go into the World Cup with huge momentum.
That would be big. Imagine beating Germany right before the World Cup. That would be quite the boost for this group. I do think that they are capable. As you said, it is on purpose. They are playing 4 very good teams leading into the World Cup. Belgium, Portugal, Senegal, and Germany. So even out of those 4 games, and I know that it's not all about wins and losses because that is when you're fine-tuning everything. But would 2 losses and 2 wins, 2 wins, a draw, and like what would be success out of those 4 games?
I think we'll find success in these games more on the how than on the actual result. I think if you go head to head with Belgium and Portugal and actually play the games, play a little bit of a back and forth game, in the end, I think. And I think I can speak for a lot of our fans. I think our fans will be okay with us losing a 2-1 game to Portugal in which we had chances and they had chances. I think in the end, our fans will be okay if we do the same against Belgium and likely against Senegal, although Senegal we're likely looking for a win. They're a great team, but we're likely looking for that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be more on the how than it is going to be on the actual results.
I would agree, even at that point, just before the World Cup. Well, there's so very much to look forward to in 2026. We're not done for 2025. We're going to have a January transfer window preview coming out. Happy holidays to everybody. Stay warm. Tab here in New Jersey. We got a lot of snow. I do enjoy the snow, so I wasn't too mad about it. But check back in with me in February when I think we're going to both be over winter. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Tab, thank you, of course, for joining me. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Inside American Soccer wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back very, very soon.